Hey everybody, just working a little more on the kitchen project and wanted to show you how to do some edge banding. So I've been working on cutting out my shelves, and you can see here I got a whole bunch of shelves that I've got cut. I used the pre-finished birch plywood, and so it's finished on both sides. And I cut those up to replace the old MDF shelves that I had. So what you're going to need first is some edge banding that you can get at supply shops. Cabinetry supply shops have this material, and you can get it in different wood finishes. You'll need a good sharp razor blade. And then I purchased this. You don't have to have it, but it does make things a little bit easier. So it's an edge banding blade, and it basically has two blades on each side, one blade for each side, and it cuts the edges off once you've laid this down. And it's spring loaded, so you can push and squeeze as you run it across. The other thing I like using is I got a piece of block. This is actually a finished piece of that plywood, and I kind of glued it together, but I've been using it as a sanding block and other things. But I've been using it for the edge banding because it does get kind of hot, because you do need a heat gun, so have yourself a heat gun. And then something to support the shelving on. So I'm actually using my pocket hole jig. Just was easy, didn't have to make any kind of new type of jig, so I'm just using the pocket hole jig to hold the board in place. So let's go ahead and get started, and let me just show you how I've been doing them. Okay, so what you want to do is go ahead and get your shelf that you're going to edge band, and make sure you do the side that you want banded. And let's go ahead and do this side. So you go ahead and I just put it into place, and that way it just kind of keeps it there. You don't have to worry about maneuvering it around. What you want to do is you want to get a piece of the tape and lay it up there, and kind of get an idea of how long of a piece you're going to need. Now I usually try to have a little extra, and then I trim it off after I'm done. So then I got it marked, I got it hand marked, and then I just take my razor blade and I'll just score it a couple of times, cut it off, and then just recheck it to make sure that it's plenty long enough. And now that you've got it long enough, you want to glue it down. So it's got glue on the back side of this tape, and all you're wanting to do is heat it up with that heat gun, and then you press down to adhere it to place. I will put it on one edge here, and I will center it on the board so that I have enough to trim on both sides. I find that if you if you try to make it flush on one edge so that you only have to trim one side, this thing has a tendency to walk around when you're heating it, and you might run into a problem where you're not covering it quite perfectly, and you'll have issues, and you have to unglue it and re-adhere it, and that's a pain. So once I do that, I'll heat it up on this one edge and then stick it with my hand, just kind of getting it started, and then I'll use the block from then on and heat it up, and then just kind of slowly work my way down. Really, the block just makes a flat surface to push down on rather than your fingers, and then it keeps your fingers out of the way from the heat. So that's really the big thing, is that this thing gets hot, and you do want to be careful not to heat this up too hot, because you don't want to burn it, obviously. You just want to get it enough to melt the glue that's underneath. So let's go ahead and get started. So you can see I started here, and it kind of worked its way almost to the edge right here, and I had to kind of fix it, which it's fine because it's right on the edge. I'll just have to trim this side, and it's okay that it's not perfectly straight or square to the board. Usually I do have an overlap on each side, but sometimes that's just the way it turns out. Once I do the first pass that goes around on the flat spot, I have found that if you take two more passes, one on this corner and then one on this back corner, with the board kind of at an angle to kind of push the edges down, it helps glue it to the real corner edge there, so that it doesn't peel away from you. I've found that it just does a better job at adhering, because just doing it on the flat side doesn't necessarily get all the way to the edges. Okay, so that's adhered. That's it. Now just let it cool for a second so that the glue has time to kind of harden up, and then we'll go ahead and trim it. So you want to take this trimmer, and it's got some leftovers in there, and it's got basically, it's got two, if you can see that, it's got two blades. There's a first blade which cuts a straight line, and then you got these two back blades here that are at a 45 degree, and what they do is they kind of give it a little bevel on the edge there. And you can adjust these. They're adjustable to go in and out, so if you want a big bevel or if you don't want a bevel at all, you can do it that way. I do a very fine bevel, and then actually I'll go back and I'll take a piece of sandpaper and go over the whole thing just to kind of smooth any rough spots. So what I do is I start, and it only goes one direction, so there's a couple of arrows here, and so you know which way you need to go with it, and then you just flip it over and go the other direction. So what I like to do is I'll start, kind of right in this area and cut this way, and then I'll start right here and then cut this other back side that I didn't get with that first pass, because you don't want to start out here. You want to start here and then work this side, and then start over here and work that side. And it just takes it takes multiple passes, so I try to take off a little bit at a time. Try not to take the full amount one time, because you can, sometimes the knife will kind of cut into the side by accident, so you want to be careful not to cut into that piece. Let me just kind of show you what I'm talking about. So the first pass, I usually don't squeeze it. I just try to get this one side, but so it takes off a sliver like that. Now I didn't take off the whole thing, but with multiple passes, you'll get a little bit cleaner each time. So it's pretty clean now. And I just feel for any lippage here, because if you got some kind of plate or canned goods or something like that you're sliding in and out, it might catch and it'll peel this off if it's not glued down, or if there's too much of an edge. So I try to make sure that you don't really feel that edge. So I just keep going over it. Now I got as much as it's going to get with this thing, and I'll just take a little piece of sandpaper and get the little, maybe little slivers, just to smooth it out, to make it blend a little better, so it's not sharp edges. And sometimes there's a little bit of that glue left over that you just want to kind of clean up. So I'll just run it at an angle. I won't just go right on the corner. That way you're not scuffing any of the edge banding, and you're not scuffing the board. You're just going right on the corner. And I just kind of go back and forth lightly, not heavy, just fix any imperfections that I might feel. So that feels pretty good. Alright, so now it's pretty much done. I feel for any places where the glue may not have caught, and you don't want it to come loose, so just want to make sure you got it good. Alright, now what we want to do is break it loose, and then you got this little leftover piece right here that you want to trim off, and I'll just lay it down flat against there, and I'll get my razor blade and I'll just cut it off. this other side. Okay, there you go. And you can get a little piece of sandpaper just to kind of smooth those edges if you want. And then it's all done. That's what it looks like. And then you just move on to the next one. And that's how you do it. It's not too hard. Really just takes, it took me longer just to videotape it rather than when you're actually doing it without with a videotape. So it doesn't take long. It just, and you know, I have about 20 to 30 of these that I'm doing. So you just kind of get into a rhythm and just knock them out. So hopefully this is helpful to you, and if you're doing it, it it'll go pretty smoothly with the right tools, and you won't have any issues. Okay? All right. Thanks.